Welcome to this demonstration of the Axiomatics data access filter for multiple databases. In this demonstration, we will focus on policy-driven and data-centric security. Let me introduce the notion of dynamic data access filtering and masking. The idea of doing dynamic access filtering and masking is to protect data directly at the source between the application and the database the application is using. We will configure the Axiomatics data access filter with policies such that only relevant entitled data is returned to the application at all times. This is protecting what matters to the user at the source directly and therefore leads to much better security. We can see in this diagram that the user is trying to select all the records they can from the database, but because the Axiomatics data access filter is sitting in the middle and between the application and the database, only those records that the user is allowed to view are returned to the application and then eventually to the user. Let's see how it works. Let's imagine we have an application on the left and a database on the right-hand side. First of all, we'll deploy our SQL proxy in between the application and the database. Our proxy will intercept the SQL statement and send it onwards to our external authorization service. The authorization service will look at the authorization policies it knows. It may also retrieve additional attributes or metadata from external sources. This could be attributes about the user, their role, their citizenship, their clearance. Eventually, based on the policies and based on those attributes, the authorization service returns a SQL statement which the SQL proxy will apply to the original statement, and therefore only entitled data will be returned from the database. The key capabilities of the Axiomatics data access filter multiple database is to deliver context-aware dynamic authorization, including the ability to filter out data from a dataset and the ability to apply on-the-fly dynamic data masking, meaning the ability to hide or change values inside a column that is being returned to a user. The Axiomatics data access filter multiple database supports Microsoft SQL, Oracle, and IBM DB2. As previously mentioned, the Axiomatics data access filter multiple database is built on top of the ZAC. Let's have a look at a use case. In this use case, a manager is sending requirements down to a developer. The developer will configure the system so that only the relevant data is returned from the database when a user comes in. The first requirement is the following: only managers can access transaction data. Okay. What else? Other users can view transactions in their region only. All right. Note that no one can view approved transactions. And let's insert some masking capability here. Let's mask the amount of the banking transaction if the user does not own the transaction. Finally, because there is credit card information in the transaction, let's partially mask the credit card number by only revealing the last four numbers, and let's apply the rule to everyone. All the developer has to do in the backend is write the relevant policy. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. Let's go over these use cases one by one and see what it looks like in the Axiomatics data access filter multiple database. Number one, let's start with a simple policy. Everyone can view all the transactions. This is the Axiomatics Services Managers, where the policies for the Axiomatics data access filter multiple database are written. Let's go ahead and click on Policy Management, and we can now inspect the different policies we have here. We have 6 different policy packages, banking step 1 through 6. In this particular demo, we will focus only on the first 5. Let's go ahead and open step 1. The step 1 policy allows access to everything. We can expand our policy to inspect what it does. We can see that it protects the transactions table, and we can see that it allows all access. Let's go deploy our policy. Let's choose our Safe Bank authorization domain. Let's choose our step 1 package. Let's click apply. And now the policy has been deployed. To verify the effect of the policy, let's use a simple application that connects to our backend database and retrieves the data. We can see that right now I am not anyone, and if I browse the data, I do not have access to any of the transaction data. Let's now enter our username, Alice. Click Set Name. And we can now see that Alice has access to all the data. Note that Alice can view the amounts. Note that Alice can view all the transactions regardless of the region. She can view the transactions regardless of the status. And she can view the entire credit card number. In total, if we scroll down, Alice can view 100 rows. She can view all items in the database. Number 2, managers alone can view transactions. This can be considered as a role-centric policy. The policy will look like the following. Only users with the role is equal to manager can view transactions. So, can Alice, the user we checked a minute ago, still view data? What about Bob? Let's check it with our simple application. Let's go back to the Services Manager. Let's go to our Policy Management. Let's open up Banking Step 2 and inspect Banking Step 2. In Banking Step 2, we have the exact same structure, but this time only managers have access to the transactions. Let's go ahead and deploy this policy. Go to my Domain Management, open the relevant policy package, Banking Step 2, click Choose, click Apply. Now, if we go back to this simple application and go back to entering my username, if I enter Alice, set the name, Alice no longer has access to the data. She is not a manager. What about Bob? Let's see. Bob is a manager. And Bob can see some transactions. Can he see all the transactions? Let's scroll down to the end. And yes, he can view all 100 transactions. Use case number 3. Users can view transactions in their own region. This policy uses a relationship between the user and the data. That relationship has to do with the region of the user. If the region of the user is equal to the region of the data, then access is granted. What can Alice view now? Let's go back to the Services Manager and let's have a look at Banking Step 3. Expand the policy and note that now we have 2 branches in my policy. One is still the branch about managers, and the other one is a branch about users being able to access transactions in their own region. What this means is that Alice will be able to view all the transactions that belong to her region. First of all, let's deploy the policy again. Choose Banking Step 3. Click Apply. And let's go back to the simple application. If I go enter my username, Alice, we can now see some transactions. How many? Total, we can view 20 transactions. Okay? And note that all the transactions are in Madrid. Alice is based in the region Madrid. Note as well that we can still see the amount, we can still see the entire credit card number, and we can see transactions that are approved. Now, let's crank it up a notch and deploy the 4th use case. Introducing data masking. Only users who own a given transaction can view that transaction's amount. This means that if Alice does not own a particular transaction she can view, she will not be able to view the amount value. Let's check both Alice and Bob. Let's go back to my policy management. Let's open Banking Step 4. Let's expand this policy. And notice here that we deny if the transaction is approved, so we will be filtering approved transactions. Also, we apply our very first example of masking. Here we will mask the amount of the transaction if the user does not own the transaction. Finally, the 2 permit policies still exist. Managers can always view all the transactions, and users can view transactions in their own region. Let's go ahead and deploy this step and see the impact on our user. Choose Step 4, choose, click Apply, Okay, let's see the impact in my simple application. I'm going to go back and I'm going to enter Alice as a username. Set name, and let's look at the data. First of all, before we could see 20 rows, and now we can only see 14. Where did the other 6 go? Well, 6 transactions had been approved, and now they no longer show up in the result. So if you look here in the status column, you will not see a single approved transaction. Great. So we filtered out some more transactions. But that's not all. Let's have a look at the amount field. Some of the values are equal to 0. Those are masked values. As a matter of fact, all the values in this example are masked. This means that Alice does not own any of the transactions, and we can easily verify this by looking at the owner value here. Jack, Gabriella, Frank, Elena, so on and so forth. Note, though, that the credit card number is still not masked. Okay, what about Bob? Bob used to be able to view all the transactions, all 100. Yet if I scroll down to the bottom of the screen, he can only view 71 transactions now. That's because 29 transactions have been approved in total in the system, and although he is a manager, he does not have access to them. Okay, what about the amount field? Can he view any amounts? Let's see. The value is masked here, always 0. Okay, scrolling back up a bit more. Nope, no values, no values, no values. And lo and behold, yes, he can view some amounts. He can view the amounts for those transactions he owns. You can see that here it says that Bob is the owner. He can view the amount. Bob is the owner. He can view the amount, so on, so forth. Great. Note that in this particular demo, masking is applied on the fly. It is not pre-calculated. The masking value used to replace the original value can be static or dynamic. In this particular example, it is a static value. Every time access is denied to the amount column, the amount value is replaced with null. And since here we're dealing with numbers, it is replaced with 0. And finally, to conclude this demonstration of the Axiomatics data access filter multiple database, let's have a look at a more advanced case of data masking. This time, we will prevent access to all the credit card numbers for all the users. We will only show the last 4 digits. Let's go back here. Let's go to my policy management, banking step 5. Let's open that up. Let's open 5. And note that now we have a new policy that specifically says to mask the credit card number. Let's go to my domain management. Let's open up my domain again. Let's choose step 5, choose, scroll down, click apply, and let's go back to my little demo. Let's go ahead and enter a username, set name, and now the credit card number is masked. You can see that only the last 4 digits are displayed. And that is true regardless of the user and any attribute. The credit card number is always masked. If I use another user, such as Bob, the effect is the same. If I use another user, such as Isabel, Isabel can only view transactions in Oslo, and you can view that the credit card number is still masked. Some of the key benefits of the Axiomatics data access filter multiple databases are in the fact that the security is policy-driven and data-centric. The authorization requirements are implemented using a policy language. They are therefore easier to audit. And the security focuses on the data rather than the container itself. Data filtering is achieved on the fly, dynamically, and as a consequence, only authorized rows are returned to the application and eventually the user. Data masking is also applied on the fly, which means that values for a given column are only returned if the user is allowed to view that column. Masking can be partial. Masking can also call advanced functions, such as data encryption. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet us at Axiomatics. Thanks and bye.